Hi, my name is Gerhard Schwartner and welcome to Selling Power's Daily Report. Today we continue our conversation with Howard Stevens, founder and CEO of HR Jelly. Howard, how do you hire, recruit, train, and develop A players?
Depends upon the economy. In a tightening economy as it is now, I think very frankly you have to change your focus and not worry so much about hiring the A players, but make sure you're not hiring D and F players. Because there just aren't going to be enough A players to go around. Every year, companies need, just for normal turnover, about 3 million additional salespeople.
So what you're saying is that it's better to focus on the middle ground instead of just on the top of the pyramid.
Yeah, and I wouldn't even say focus on the middle ground. I would say focus on making sure you don't bring in any losers. I'll use a sports analogy. I can afford somebody who doesn't hit home runs as long as they don't strike out constantly. Somebody can get hits, doesn't have to be a home run hitter every time.
Now, what is the role of training and development after you have hired that candidate? Can training and enculturation and motivation, compensation, can that make a major difference?
Yeah, but I would suggest to you that a good rule of thumb is what we would call a rule of 20, which means that training can improve someone by up to 20% from whatever they were before. If you brought a natural talent in, a true A player, a 70 or an 80, you're going to end up with someone who's a 90 or 95 and have a superstar. The important thing to remember, though, is if you bring in somebody who's a 20, you'll spend the rest of your life and they'll never be more than a 25. The key issue here then becomes what kind of training in terms of the method of training and the content of training.
But there's still sales leaders out there that want to hire the Michael Jordans. Yeah. How is that possible? How can you find and attract that multi-million-dollar producer?
The reality is you can't. And again, I'll use a sports analogy. You can try to. George Steinbrenner certainly does with the Yankees in terms of continually spending more than anything else. And by virtue of having more money in a very limited pool, he's often able to do it. But you note the Yankees don't win the World Series every year. Periodically we find people, and I'll go back to basketball in the days of John Wooten. He produced a team that won 10 years in a row. It'll probably never be matched again. What you knew with John Wooten is whoever played there was going to be good enough to be a good player.
Now, isn't it true that A companies attract more A players than anybody else? Yeah. How do they do it?
There's a difference between attracting and keeping is a key issue. In the world of recruiting and development, we would say a general kind of old wives' tale is people, new recruits, are attracted to companies, but they leave managers. So the key issue is you can have the brand name up front and that'll give you a better choice, but it all is useless if you don't develop those people most effectively.
So Howard, A players born, trained, motivated, incentivized, where does an A player come from?
I don't think we know the answer 100%. Because being an A player is one part talent and one part the discipline to exercise, practice, and so forth. That part that's talent is probably in the genes. You can argue nurture and nature forever. We do know the top salespeople, like top leaders and top entrepreneurs, demonstrate those characteristics by the time they're 10 or 12 years old. And if you don't demonstrate it, you're never going to get it. Ultimately, Gerhard, I'd rather have someone with a fair amount of talent and super discipline than a great amount of talent and fair discipline.
So what you're saying is that A players, they are tough to find. It's challenging to identify them. It's challenging to recruit them and retain them. And I think it's also challenging to create a culture of A players within the organization. And that leads us to the next subject, which is really professionalism in selling and systematizing that sales culture. And we talk about that tomorrow. Join us tomorrow on the Selling Power Daily Report with Howard Stevens.